Hello, my name is Joe Marano, and in this video I'll be giving you tips and tricks on how I photographed hares out in the wild. So a little bit about myself. Like I said, my name's Joe Marano. I've been a wildlife photographer for around about 10 years now. As for my credentials, I actually appeared on BBC One's Country File back in 2020. It was an episode at Welney Wetland Centre, and they asked me, because they'd seen a lot of my images of hares, they asked if I was interested in trying to capture some hares at Welney. Now, it was freezing cold in January, absolutely pouring of rain. There weren't many hares about, but I was still able to deliver. So yeah, you can watch that episode, I think possibly on iPlayer. So that was an incredible experience working with the BBC. And yeah, being able to deliver in those conditions was a real challenge. So I'm glad that I could do that for them. I've actually got videos on my YouTube channel. I've got one about hares from a few years ago, and then it was actually in this rough area, and it's a good watch if you're interested in sort of the techniques that I use. But let's get back to the topic. Let's start from the very beginning. How would you even locate hares? Well, hares don't generally tend to be found in parks and towns and cities. You've really got to come out to the countryside. You want to head to farmland, places with good vegetation. At the minute, I'm in the wilds of West Norfolk, and the first thing you want to do is I would drive around the area that you've chosen. Drive around the area looking for potential spots where there could be hares and locate them that way. Once you've located the area where there are hares, that's where the real challenge tends to occur. So just take myself for an example. I've driven in, and the last time I was here was about a year, possibly 2 years ago, and everything has changed. The vegetation level, the types of vegetation, the smell, everything is completely different. So you want to take your time to get to know that area. Take your time to see what sort of areas the hares are in, where the fields that they commonly frequent, and at what times of the day. Now, in particular, I seem to have been quite successful early in the mornings. Most of my good shots are from then, but I have had hares at all times of day. I would say early mornings is probably your best bet, but it's okay. I mean, I've seen plenty of hares about today. So once you've done your recce of the area, you really want to find choke points and potential areas of cover for yourself. So using myself as an example, I'm aware that right now we've got a wide open field, and in front of me I've got a load of bushes. So what I could do, if potentially there were hares in this field, I could go around the back and potentially cut through the bushes, meaning that I'm in cover and the hares won't be able to see me. A large part of wildlife photography is your fieldcraft, trying not to be seen. I mean, at the minute, I'm not particularly camouflaged up. I'm just wearing all green. That is incredibly helpful. It helps me blend in with the environment. I'm not going to stand out too much. I mean, the main things is going to be my post-winter UK white skin that's going to give me away. But yeah, the rest of me, the green helps break me up. I sort of roughly blend in with my environment, and if I was to place myself just on the edge of a bush, or if I'm laying down, even just wearing what I'm wearing, you probably wouldn't find me. So yeah, it's really getting to know that area, seeing where the hares are going. I've had great success in the past where I've laid down in a farmer's field, and where the tractor goes through, it leaves its sort of tyre marks. I was able to lay down in those marks knowing that the hares would use them almost as like train tracks or highways. And it was just a matter of time before one would just head straight down towards me. It was really early in the morning, and I was able to get some really incredible shot using pretty kind of old technology, a camera that didn't have particularly good autofocus, but using the skills that I'd put into practice over all that time, I was able to get a really good shot. So yeah, definitely know your area. Definitely get to know it. Get to know where all the spots are. Get to know whether you can get into a position to photograph the hares. And yeah, that'll make life so much easier. For the next thing on the topic is actually photographing the hares themselves. So you found them, you've spotted them. Now how do you actually get photographs of them? Well, in an ideal world, you'd want to be using a camera with a telephoto lens. That means that you can be a reasonable distance from your subject and still get kind of frame filling shots. So at the moment, myself, I'm camera agnostic. I don't really care what camera, what brand you use. I'm using a Lumix G9 Mark II with a 100 to 400mm lens. Now, because it's a micro four thirds camera, it's a crop sensor camera that gives me a 2x crop. So this 100 to 400 lens, if you compare it to full frame, it would look more like a 200 to 800mm. So I would start off, realistically, I wouldn't personally want to have less than a 400mm lens. Now, if you've got a high megapixel body, you could possibly get away with one of those, 200mm f2.8 lenses. But for me personally, kind of the 400mm range is ideally what you should be aiming for. You don't really want to get too close to the hares, and to be fair, a lot of the time you're not going to be able to. But yeah, as for the FPS, your autofocus and such, I don't think it really matters, because I was using sort of Lumix G7s, G80s a few years ago with quite dreadful autofocus, not the best frames per second, but I was still able to get good results. And at the end of the day, frames per second and autofocus, the better it is, the easier your task is. But I wouldn't say it's absolutely essential for hares. They're a reasonably large animal. The autofocus probably shouldn't struggle with them too much, and they're not massively fast moving. They can be. I think they've been clocked at about 45 miles an hour, but that's a new challenge in of itself. Just getting portraits, getting behaviour, cleaning, stretching, that sort of stuff, you're not going to need ridiculous FPS. So that's a little bit about the gear. You can use tripods, you can use gimbal heads. I prefer to go handheld. These cameras, I believe it's got about 7.5 stops of image stabilisation. So being prone, getting down on your knee, even standing, it's not particularly hard. If your camera doesn't have image stabilisation, if your lens hasn't got any, obviously a tripod would be essential, but I prefer to go handheld. So we've talked a bit about the location. We've spoke a little bit about the gear. Let's get onto the topic of actually photographing the hares themselves. How do you go about that? Well, there's numerous ways. There's not one size fits all. But in general, I found that if you're as low to the ground as possible, I mean, my human form right now, I am quite imposing on this environment. If it wasn't for the trees, the bushes, the posts, I'm the main thing that sticks out. We are quite tall animals when you get down to it, and we're quite imposing. Walking upright, we look quite scary. So if you were to get down and even just kneel down, you become such a smaller figure. You're so much less imposing. If you were to lay down, you're pretty much at that point now lower than the hares. So you become far less aggressive looking. You're obviously, we walk on two legs. Laying down isn't a fast way of moving. So if animals, generally speaking, seeing a human laying down, they know that you're pretty much not going to be too much of a threat. We'll spot a hare. Naturally, I'll be looking about where it's moving, or its rough general direction of movement. So if I spot one out to my left, say 200 meters away, I'll be watching. Is it heading this way, or is it generally heading towards me? And I could spend 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, even longer, just looking what's its behaviour, where's it likely to go. If I decide it's going off away from me, I can use the hedgerow that's in front of me, go round the back of it, and effectively I'm using my old army infantry techniques. We're outflanking. So I can then get a lot closer and head it off that way. But yeah, just watching for its movement, looking for opportunities where you can get close without actually having to put in a lot of effort. Sure, you could crawl on your front, which when it's muddy isn't really ideal. It's not very nice. It's not very nice in the rain. I did it at Welney, but it's not enjoyable. We want wildlife photography to be as easy as possible in an ideal world. So yeah, you could crawl 200 meters trying to make as little noise as possible, but let's just say that hare sees you and shoots off. You've now got to repeat that process, potentially on the same subject or a different one. It's very time consuming and quite exhausting. So being able to, read where the subject's going and how you can kind of head it off, how you can intercept so you're expending less energy as possible is ideal. So we've done that. We've found a hare. He's heading towards me. Well, straight away, ideally I'd be in some sort of cover. Ideally I'd be camouflaged, although it's not essential, and I would lay down. And as the hare's approaching, you can then obviously get shots that way. And I've had hares, when I'm laying down, I've genuinely had hares inches away from me. And it's not because they were friendly or I was in a location where, they're not used to humans or they're not scared of humans. If I was, as I am now, I've got not a shadow of a doubt that that hare wouldn't have got that close. But because I wasn't imposing, because I was very still, because I've been in the area for a long time, the hare was not fazed by my presence at all. And that's how I'd do it. To get close to them, that's how I'd do it. Just trying to make the most of that environment, keeping low, and yeah, I think that's definitely going to get you the best results. So we've spoke a little bit about finding hares, the area, a little bit about the gear, how to actually approach and find them. What next? What other little tips and tricks would I give? Well, once you've got close and photographed your first hare, that's when you can start learning from that experience. What can you do to then build upon that? So as an example, one morning I saw that there were always hares at the end of a farmer's track, and I would basically every morning visit that area and I would walk around like reasonably normally, not paying attention to these hares. And I would just keep going every morning and just getting a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer, until the hares are roughly accustomed to me. They knew that I wasn't a threat. And then it was just timing it with the beautiful sunrise, and I inched closer and closer to the hare, pretending that I was not paying any attention to it whatsoever, and then to finally lay down and then slowly inching forward on my front, getting closer and closer and closer until I was able to get in a position where the hare was that comfortable. It eventually got up, stretched, and you had the beautiful kind of colours of the green and the sunrise behind it. Now, the sunrise wasn't as good as I was hoping for that morning, but that was just an image that I'd seen in my mind, and it's something that I made happen through probably about a week of preparing. If you want to get different or remarkable images, you need to think in your head, what is it that I want to achieve? What have I not seen before? So for me, for example, I haven't got many images of hares in the rain. So going forwards, I would like to get out and capture beautiful images of wet hares and with the rain falling. There's infinite, same with any photography, there's infinite potential there. So just try and see an image and over time potentially make that happen. I want to go a little bit more into locations because I've fallen foul of this issue a few times, and that's the issue of land access. So at the moment, like I said, we're at Fincham Nature Reserve, so this is all publicly accessible and you're allowed to naturally in a public area photograph. What you can't do is just go onto private land, private farms and just start photographing. Like I said, I have fallen foul of this before and it's not something that I intend to do again. If potentially you see land and you don't know who it belongs to, perhaps just head down to the nearest building that's close by and ask, excuse me, do you know who owns this piece of land? most people will be able to tell you, yeah, it belongs to Farmer Brown. So what I would do is knock on Farmer Brown's door, introduce myself. Hi, I'm Joe Marano. I'm a wildlife photographer. I'm really interested in photographing brown hares. I've seen some in your field. Could I potentially take photos, and any of those photos that you like, I could perhaps offer those to you for your own use. I won't disclose the area to anyone else. I could potentially alert you to poachers or any wrongdoings on your land, and I'll probably only do it between the hours of, say, 6 and 8 on a Tuesday and Wednesday. That way, I mean, obviously go in with all of your gear, just be as open and as honest. Most people are quite receptive to that. At the end of the day, you know, if it looks like you're up to no good, they're probably not going to let you. But I mean, I've asked for permission to use land and I've been successful. So it's definitely something you don't want to fall foul to. If you can, try to stick to, you know, nature reserves, publicly accessible areas. If obviously, you know, you're near to a field and you're on a public sort of area, you're on a road, you can photograph onto private land. That isn't an issue whatsoever. You just can't be on the private land and take photographs without permission. So that's just one thing that I thought I'd mention that you don't want to fall foul to. What other tips and tricks would I give going forwards? Perhaps find different locations. Go out and look at images of hares and think to yourself, what is it that I like? What kind of images do I want to capture going forward? I've captured images of hares in graveyards, for example. There aren't huge amounts of images of hares in graveyards. So if you can make those images stand out and, you know, stand out from the rest, just try something a little bit different. That's always a really good thing to do. I'm sure after I finish this video, I'll have millions, or not hundreds perhaps, of more tips and tricks that you could do to capture hares out in the wild. But I hope this video has been useful to you. If it has, please hit it with a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already. And yeah, like I said, my name's Joe Marano. I make wildlife videos on YouTube. I've not been that active recently because I've been trying to look after my health. I've been going to the gym. You couldn't tell underneath this, but trust me, I have been. I'm also a family man. I work 50 hours a week as well. So wildlife photography, I don't get to necessarily focus all of my attention onto that as much as, you know, I potentially might like. If you've got any questions or comments, please drop them. I'm always respond to all questions and comments. And if this video's helped you in any way and you've gone out and you've captured, you know, your first images of hares, please get in touch and send me your photos. That would be absolutely great. So yes, thank you very much for watching, and until next time.